Hello, my friends, and welcome to the third season of Brand Your Dream Show. And today we have interesting guest who is going to share with us a lot of business advice, recommendations. And if you ever want to sell your business or think about selling your business, you need to watch this interview. I'm interviewing today George Sotiropoulos. He's business advisor and a great person with many interesting stories. Hi, George. How are you doing?
Hi, Eve. How are you?
Please introduce yourself
Thank you
and
for having
tell
me on
us
board
more
here.
specifically what you do.
Okay. Hi. So my name is George Sotiropoulos. I'm the founder of a company called Sophiall. And what we do is we work with business owners who, who right now they feel like they're overworked. They feel like they are putting all the hours in. The dreams of what they had when they started the business are just memories right now. Um, and ultimately, it's an issue where they're the business that they own has actually turned into a job. And it's a
Mm.
job that works them overtime and which doesn't pay them what it's worth. And so what I do is I come in and I help them, and literally I help them with one through one main strategy. We help them transform their company from what's really a job into an independent business, an independent and sellable business, so that even if they have no intention of selling anytime soon, they now own a business that works for them. And why? Because now you have a business that has the systems, the processes, the teams, everything in place that as an owner, they can focus all their time on taking that business to the next level and not having to do the day-to-day grind. So, in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Mhm. I absolutely love it because it's interesting that many people consider themselves business owners. Why most of the times they either self-employed or they actually it's a hobby or they're just freelancers because business is a different entity. It's business which work for you, which I love you highlighted it. So, because our first question is always about visibility, and I usually frame it in a more relatable form for each guest, I want to ask you three questions about visibility. The question number one,
Yeah.
do you think visibility is actually impact business success? Question number two, what is a part of visibility in any business strategy, if any? And also, how visibility impacted your own business?
Okay. I actually think it's really important. I think in today's day and age, trust is really important. And people have sort of been turned off by visibility that has been too photoshopped. So for example, I have on a website, I have a picture of myself, which personally I hate it. I think it looks kind of idiotic. But what others say is when they see that picture, they say you look accessible. I'm like,
Mhm.
and it's true. I had the temptation to remove that picture, get a studio shot, and it didn't make sense. And I think now with visibility, it's also being genuine. It's being authentic. I think that's what's important. There really is too much fear, too much people not willing to show what they believe and who they are, very worried about being canceled or very worried about that they had to fit one specific image. Um, and I think now when I think of visibility, I think of being able to show your true self and then let where the chips fall where they lay. Don't try to please everybody. Just say this is who you are, this is what you're doing, and then take it from there. So I think with visibility, whether it's public speaking, whether it's doing podcasts like this, whether it's sending out daily emails or blogs or whatever it is, um, I think I find it actually much more liberating now that in a sense we can be more ourselves and people are reacting to that, you know, compared to this sort of studio produced avatar, that just yeah, people are starting to ignore because it's too perfect. No one
Mhm.
likes too perfect. Um, it's why, when you look at all the good movies that were out there, the hero always had something happen to him, whether it was in, Rocky 3 or whether it was in Superman 2, in both of those movies, the hero got their butts kicked, right? And then they
Mhm.
had to come back from that. And that's what people can relate to. People can relate to the challenge, to the struggle. So I think in terms of visibility, if if you can show that you're genuine, I think that plays a big part. And now for my clients, and when we speak to them, they do have to be a little careful in the sense that if the business is all about them and they haven't built an independent business, then it does become something that's hard to sell. And so in a sense, they want to put themselves forward because people want to see a human being on the other side, not just a machine. Um, but they also want to make sure that they have uh, a full suite of systems and processes in place so that if they ever do try to sell one day, someone doesn't say to them, well,
Mhm.
XYZ is you. And if you walk out that door, so does XYZ.
Mhm.
So that's, yeah.
First
And
of
then in
all, I
my
love it.
business, yeah. And then
First
in
of all,
my
I love
business
it
for
because I recently give the consultancy, which was actually pretty similar. And I don't consider myself business consultant. I consider myself
okay.
brand expert. And you just prove every single point. I love it because it's like, please my ego. And also, I love the factors that you get into really depths of storytelling. So go on with the last part of the answering. I mean, I already enjoyed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just going to say with my business, I
Mhm.
think, there's actually some really good advice I got when I started the business. In the beginning, I wanted to sort of build this idea of, you know, that the business is actually bigger than me in some ways, which it wasn't, um, and and I realized right away that people don't respond uh to that, and so I put myself out, and it made all the difference. People responded to me. It responded to whether we were talking on a one-on-one or they would see a video or whatever it was. Uh, they would respond to that because at least they felt they were talking to someone on the other side and not speaking to something that's just there's nothing there. In many ways it's like, when you call your customer service
Mhm.
and they just have a script that they read from, and it's just annoying, because
Yeah.
you feel like you don't know who you're talking to, whether you're talking to a bot or a person or some
Mhm.
sort of weird combination between the two. um I think it all kind of ties together. So yeah.
Absolutely perfect. And also, it's very interesting because in one of our upcoming guests, she's expert in customer service. So that's
Ah,
what you just said. I mean, it will be linked somewhere. Authenticity, it's very interesting part of visibility, or maybe it's separate because it's also connected to the message, business message, and in fact, the business approach as well. And when we think about the strategy around authenticity, and you already touched this aspect that we need to be ourselves and things like that, but separation between me and business, I am business, or business without me, that's a very interesting
yeah.
point which I want to dive in along with the aspect of authenticity. So, and this is a question which I personally asked a lot. People ask, like, when I built my personal brand and I built my business brand, where should I put my focus? Because I've been teaching for a long time that we can build three types of brands, and together they can form the brand. So three types of brand are personal brand, business brand, and product brand. All three can be separated and like absolutely function on their own, or they can form the unique brand. So let's say Richard Branson, Virgin, and any product, or like Oprah, Harpo, in and again any product. So it all works together, right? So in any case, we can speak about things which are purely product brand. Surprisingly, for many people, the film Secret is the product brand. So it's basically not connected to any specific person, while personal brand of each participant is actually highlight this kind of product, yet it's a product brand. So speaking about this, these are all different types of strategies. What do you think in the modern environment, considering that we're going to sell the business, what is the best approach to authenticity, how we show up authentically, how much we need to put of our personality and authenticity in the business?
I think it's a good question. And I would start out by saying that a mistake, I believe a lot, especially small business owners that we make when it comes to brand, is we assume that we have to follow the playbook of Coca-Cola or we have to follow the playbook of one of these big companies, right? And we bankrupt ourselves in the process. Um, the brand is built often on the experience that you provide. And so, and that's true, whether it comes on our personal brand, if, if we portray a certain image of ourselves, and then we get arrested, right?
Mhm.
That's going to have a big effect on the quote unquote, the artificial brand that we try to construct.
Mhm.
Um, and I think even those people that you mentioned, let's say Branson, or let's say you think of Steve Jobs and all these people,
Yeah.
in many ways, it was their day-to-day activities, the things that we never saw that built that brand. Much more effective than if they just went to some PR agency and said, okay, turn me into a visionary, or whatever, or
Mhm.
turn me into this, or turn me into that. Um, and and so I think in answer to that question, often the personal brand, if it helps, if you have a business where trust is very important, a personal brand can be very integral to that if you can convey that trust through the personal brand, right? So if I have a business and I do accounting, or I have accounting software, the accounting software might be amazing. Like, you press three buttons and it does all the bookkeeping for you and all this stuff. Um, But if people are looking for trust, they're not going to care about the accounting software and its bells and whistles. The accounting software bells and whistles, the brand of the product brand of that will come to play when people have to decide, do I go for this program or do I go for that program? QuickBooks versus this, whatever. But but the personal brand can play a big part for to even get into the room to listen
Mhm.
to what they have to say. Um, and when it comes to selling, what's really, really important, they're also in many ways they're kind of tied together. If an owner comes off as untrustworthy, if they come off that their integrity is a bit challenging, um, that can scuttle a deal, regardless of what the business is looking like, regardless of the profitability. I've seen it. I saw people who tried to sell their business repeatedly and then always failed. Um, and these were people who did have challenges with their integrity. They really did. That's what they were known for, and it would keep biting them over and over again. So it's very hard to silo those, especially when it comes to selling the business, because um, when it comes time to sell, yes, you have to have your financial performance, you have to have, the systems in place, you have to be able to differentiate yourself. You have to hit all those angles of what would make quote unquote a business sellable. But but ultimately, especially for the smaller businesses, it's going to be the owner, and they're going to either help sink or help the deal go through. Uh,
Mhm.
if the person's trustworthy, if they have that authenticity, often it can help the deal go through. Maybe even sometimes add a little to the price. If it's the opposite, it's the opposite issue.
Mhm.
I don't know if that did that answer what you were asking?
I think it's very interesting because, first of all, it gave me really interesting insight, which I probably was looking for a while. You just formulate something which was like, moving around my head, and you're like, tick, oh yeah, now it's formed. I love it. So I will definitely rewatch it, like for a few insights, because I was like, light bulbs, like, okay, good, we have recording. So. That's really interesting. And what I want to understand from this, and I think it's really important for people to realize how huge impact they have on their own business. As you said, with the small businesses, and I think with small businesses, we talk about people who have like below 10 people in the company. So pretty much everybody know them. It's like family type of business. So what I noticed in time of pandemic that people pay a lot more attention to personal brand, to actually business owner than before. So before it was like, yeah, buying, selling businesses. Probably the nail which you hit in my head is like, I understand that branding and trust and business are like super connected. However, I didn't put it as a trust before, but is that a trust issue related to pandemic when people become more careful with purchasing new businesses? That's why they want to dive deeper to understand who they trust. Because overall, in the business brand communication, what I noticed that people now looking for the business owners, they want to hear from them. They want to see what their value are. If they want to purchase from business, which is like have certain integrity. I met personally so many people here who are not buying coffee because basically this coffee is not sustainable, the packaging is plastic or something like this, and they're serious about that. So it's really a big thing. People now are openly standing for their values. So do you think there is some change which was caused by pandemic, or it just like a natural cause and effect situation? It was just going in
I,
that
I
direction.
think I think it was going in that direction before the pandemic. So
Mhm.
I remember back during the apartheid area. I was growing up in the States, and and people were boycotting South Africa at the time, because of the apartheid regime that they had, and they said put the sanctions and all this stuff. And I saw that throughout the time. I saw when, um, you know, as soon as there was something about a company that offended, or there was something about them that was dodgy, then there was always that let's go ahead and boycott this and that. I think what's happened now is there's a lot more visibility and a lot more understanding of certain things. Um, there's a lot more awareness of how marketing happens and how messaging is sent and and it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few years. What other industries might start getting tarred with certain or tagged with certain things, um, that when I was a child, for example, I used to have those cigarette bubble gums, right? The you'd
Mm.
buy gum and it was actually a pack, like, so you pretended you were smoking and you had camel and there's a cartoon character
Yeah.
and all this stuff.
Remark, we
I
need to
mean,
explain it to younger generations. I also remember them.
exactly. And it was, but when, smoking a bubblegum cigarette was to get us in the habit later on that we become smokers. I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's really no, but at the time you didn't think of it. No one really talked about it. No one thought about it at the time.
Mhm.
I think what the pandemic did is, by everyone being inside and the daily routine being completely interrupted, gave people time to sit back and take stock of what was going on.
Mm.
So a lot more people said, look, I don't want to commute for 55 minutes. I want to be able to work from home. I want to be, which is curious, because in my personal experience, funny, ironically enough, was I started working from home back in the 1990s.
Mm.
And so I always liked working from home when I could, but that was kind of a completely different experience. And then it felt like people caught up during the pandemic. Uh, but now what happens is also people want connections. So it'll be, not to go into whether working from home or not and what's going to happen after that. Let's go back to your question. Um, I do think that um, there is more awareness now about, let's say, the moral choices you make on the products that you buy. But there is a limit to it.
Mhm.
You know, there are things made in China. made with labor that's, questionable, that's to say the best. But people still want some of their goods and they'll still buy it. I don't see a big boycott on Apple happening right away, or happening right now. I don't see it on some of the other stuff. So it'll be interesting. I do have an issue if there's a lot of virtue signaling. If a lot of people are saying, "Hey, look at me," like, and why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Kind of if there's a lot of judgmentalism about it,
Mm-hmm.
because they have to be careful because often there's going to be a lot of hypocrisy behind it. They're going to be making choices that someone else will point out and saying, "Well, actually, those are unethical," you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then now they're stuck in the position of being a hypocrite, which is an uncomfortable position to be in. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, so yeah,
Which is a lot of hypocrisy nowadays. I mean, anyways, for
yeah.
those who pay attention. So, another question which I have to you based on that, what you were saying, and I love that analogy because I keep saying that again. I mean, what resonates is that what I keep saying, and you suddenly say it, and I'm like, wow, I'm not alone in this universe. you know, you say that people take Coca-Cola as a blueprint and then they fail. And I've been saying this like forever. I remember the first time it was 2010, I guess, or something around that. A company with who we work, they were working on rebranding, and we were just like helping them with a different part of the company. So we were not involved in that rebranding. That was a British company, and I was working in India by that time. So the brand expert who was leading the idea was giving them idea about Coca-Cola as an example. And I was
Mhm.
like, in the moment I saw Coca-Cola in that presentation, I was feeling like crying, shouting, almost hysterical, because the services of the company didn't have anything in common with Coca-Cola services. And what is good for fast-thinking company, which is sell product for $30 or $2 or something, doesn't work for company which sells things for $2,000 or $1,000 or anything above 300 say dollars, because that's a logical thinking involved, long-term thinking, people already comparing Hoover or vacuum cleaner with, with this purchase. So you get into competition with different products. While let's say with Coca-Cola, you are not in competition with anything. It's fake competition, Pepsi and Coca-Cola. It's marketing story. Because if I'm thirsty and I'm fan of sweet soda or whatever, I don't drink it. But I mean, I don't care. I buy anything
Right.
which is there at the moment. I don't
Yeah,
really care
exactly.
about the brand. So it's not a non-thinking kind of product. So any other product which is not in this category can't use these methods. They have to use methods with appropriate products which are related to the
Yeah.
price category and all the kind of things. That's why when I see Coca-Cola product example in every second presentation from brand experts, so it's like a big deal. So please highlight this aspect because I want to hear that from you.
It's well, I actually think that a lot of the brand experts. Sorry about the dog, but right, right. But
No
a
worries,
lot
we
of the
love dogs.
brand experts, um, is it just not it's not practical. It's they think that here's I actually think it's useless, right? And I think, if you're a small company and you want to build your brand, deliver on your services or your solutions to your customers. Do it in such a way that your customers learn to love you and they start promoting you, and the word of mouth starts going and going and going. And then when you do your advertising, actually fulfill the promise of what you made, or exceed the promise of what you made in the advertising, and keep building it that way. And then you get a brand on the back of that. Um, I think, like, in that presentation, that's a perfect example. It sounds like you were in an entrepreneurial company and they were told to follow Coca-Cola. They probably
Mm,
tried to follow Coca-Cola and they got their shirts handed to them, and
mhm,
they were killed. Um, it's like, it's kind of in history. In the First World War, the generals were all obsessed with Napoleon, and they said we need to fight this battle as Napoleon would have fought it, and so they charged into machine guns, and they were just wiped out. It's the same concept. Um, I think for when I talk to clients a lot of times, the businesses and all that, is if they're going to invest in the marketing and the brand and this and that, start with the direct response, because
Hmm.
that's the scientific approach, and that's the one you're going to find out right away whether what you're saying actually resonates or it doesn't resonate. Um, because it's more than just quote unquote the brand. It's also you have to meet the market where they are, and you have to have the conversation with them that they're having in their heads. And
Exactly.
it doesn't it would do, for example, in let's say in my business, which I have a high ticket items. There's a lot. It's a long process, and there's a lot of trust I have to build before someone will invest in it. um, I can't just send a picture of a puppy, in a like with a cute puppy and say, here you are now, please invest $1,000. It's just not going to work, right? It's kind of like in a .com, where all those .com companies blew all their money on Super Bowl advertising, and they're all out
Hmm.
of business within a couple of years. But the ones that weren't stupid, uh, and actually built businesses, they're still around. So yeah, I think when it comes to, I think sometimes we have to remember that the strongest brands are the ones that have the foundation of the day-to-day delivery behind it.
Hmm.
And if you try to shortcut it with some gimmicks and this and that, there might be a little flash in the pan, but ultimately it just fails. There was a I saw an article yesterday of, I forgot what her name was, but this woman at JP Morgan, they sold a something about with student loans or something like that, and they told JP Morgan that they had 5 million members, and according to the lawsuit from JP Morgan, 4.5 million were fake. And so what they did was, during the due diligence, they went and just made 5 million names, showed it to them. And so of course JP Morgan came, they took the 5 million names, they gave $175 million for this company. They go to process, send out emails for people, for these were students with loans or something like that. I forget what it was. And the response rate was less than 1%.
Wow.
Now, now look what JP Morgan was doing. What the first thing they went to was direct response marketing. And they had metrics and they had the science behind it. And they knew what they should be expecting. And all of a sudden they saw a
Exactly.
campaign that was just abysmal, and they knew right away that, and so they looked into it and realized these were fake names. This is complete garbage. And um and and that and the problem is that if you try to build a brand artificially, if you try to build it and say, if I turn around tomorrow and say I'm better than McKinsey and I'm better than Bain, and I can, 2 seconds are going to find out it's a fraud, right? Um, so I don't do that. um, but I think what happens is we get enamored with it. Uh, I've had some people come to me, to try to sell their services and all that, and they'll use some arguments, and it's just like, no, it's not the time for that. There's a time later for that. There's a time later when you can invest in certain things, about what we would call traditional branding activities, but not now. Not as a small business, not at this time.
Hmm.
I'll be much more effective getting glowing customer testimonials than, you know, than putting my face on a
Hmm.
blimp flying over a stadium. Who cares?
Exactly. I always say that you first sales first and that brand second, because you need to actually invest a lot
Yeah,
in brand if you want to make it successful.
yeah,
And brand is a way to scale the business, not necessarily build the
yeah,
business. There is exception though. When we build some product business or something like this, we will need some elements of logo and things like this
yeah,
because we put it on a packaging and things like this.
yeah,
But even then, we can start smaller and more simple. But I mean, it doesn't require that big investment as the real brand. Because for many people, oh my God, I built the logo. This is my brand. It's done. I'm like, nope, it's not even, it's nothing. So, yeah, when we talk about branding, we talk about mission statement, positioning, all this kind of things. And this is only possible when we understand who our customers, what they want, how they communicate, what the dialogue which is going on in the
yeah,
head, that what you say. So I 100% agree that there is a time for branding, but it's not necessary from the beginning. And also, it depends how we strategically build the brand when we build our business, depending on our plans, depending, as you say, are we going to sell it or are we going to do something? And also, I just want to put a little point on the frauds, because we had lovely guest who was speaking about the frauds and the psychology, how people use tricks and marketing ideas to fraud people and, like, to involve them in some scam ideas, which I absolutely will mention somewhere. So totally watch that interview. So what I remember, some very big influencer in India approached our company with the offer of advertising. And I always say that metrics and understanding how marketing work is really, really important for any
Yeah.
business. It's like literacy. So they said that if you will promote with us, you will pay X amount of money, which was not really big, somewhere around $300 per month or something.
Yeah.
And we will put you once or twice on our Instagram profile. And hey, we have somewhere around 100,000, I guess they had by that time. So what
Yeah.
I did, I just moved to the followers who are 100,000, and I looked to that kind of communication and customer engagement in their profiles, which was pretty low, approximately 1%, considering the size of the followership.
Yeah.
And every second person who followed them had closed profile, which is proportionally unrealistic. It
Yeah.
instantly screamed that this is a fake profile.
Exactly.
Every second person. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this is purchased followers. Thank you very much. And I clearly did write them the email that they're frauds and stuff like this.
Yeah.
The truth is, this person was probably one of the top two influencers in New Delhi
Yeah.
by that time, probably in all India, because of the size of the followership. And that's why
Mhm.
I always say, like, this, the number of followers says nothing about health
Of
of your
course.
profile. The engagement says a lot.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
you can have 100 customers who love you, engaged with you, and you will make way more money than if you have millions of people who really care not
Ex-
about you or about your channel.
exactly. There's two things here. It's about conversion. I'll bring one point back to branding really quickly before we move to this conversion part. Is now one thing that is important, I think, for small businesses and all that. If there's something about their service, if there's certain messaging about who they are and what they represent, why someone should do business with them, they have to be consistent about that across the board. They can't say one day, oh, I love the color blue, and then the next day, no, I like purple, or no, I like green, or I don't like the colors at all. Um, they have to be consistent about that. And the savvy ones, what they'll do is they'll always find a way to communicate uh, that message in a way, in a sense, not explicitly, but they'll be able to steer the conversation so it moves in a direction where their message can resonate even more. Um, and so it's and so I think with branding, that's where personal branding is very important for small businesses, because
Mhm.
they have to make sure that they're consistent with their messaging, and get the messaging out there, in a consistent way. So if they get invited on a webinar, right, you know, they're not gonna spend the whole time talking about basketball, right? If their business is food delivery or something like that, unless they're delivering to basketball arenas. So I think that's important. And then in terms of what you just said, which I think is really, really important, and this is with online advertising, they chase a lot of things that really just are kind of almost useless. So they'll say, okay, if you give us you give us $10,000, we're going to get you 100,000 eyeballs on your website, or we'll give you 100,000 clicks, or impressions, or whatever it is, whatever. But you can put 2 million impressions of people who would never buy my service in a million years. What good does that do for me? I would rather have 100 highly qualified impressions that because that's where the conversion, that's where it makes sense. A marketing funnel or sales funnel, you have to go from the bottom up. Okay, how many customers do I want? And out of those customers, well, how many prospects do I need to speak with? Of those prospects, how many leads turn into prospects? And how many impressions turn into leads? And as you can see, if you bring in garbage, you're just going to get garbage on the other side. And by garbage, I mean bad fit. Um, but if you bring in, the people who want to use your service, then it's much better. It would be like opening a steakhouse in the middle of India. It's like, why would you do that? So it's just, I think that's an important point you made. It's very easy to chase a bunch of shiny objects with the marketing. And I made this mistake. And you shell out some money on the promise, and then you
They're
realize,
very
oh,
convincing.
crap. Yeah, exactly. It didn't work. You're like, I could have used that money for something else. But you take it as a learning. You take it and you move on to something else. And I think always have in mind, as you're investing in something, what is the return? What is the goal of it? What's the return of that? If some of that, I get this all the time. Oh, we'll place you in 100 newspapers. Well, what do I care if it's 100 student newspapers in the middle of the forest in Canada? It's not going to help me at all. Um, I want to reach, say, business owners who have the issues that I talk about, who will, you know, I have something that they would really, really like, and they're people that I can really, really help. That's who I want to talk to. I don't, when it comes to business, I don't have, I don't want to have a bunch of leads that I have to filter through and say, okay, these are fake and all this stuff.
So I absolutely love our conversation, and I would like to emphasize and focus a little bit more on return on investment and also the metrics which we can put for business purposes. And I just want to highlight the aspect that when we talk about advertising and branding, there is a lot of metrics on effectiveness, which is not necessarily related to the return on investment.
Mhm.
And in business, it's a very different story because we're always talking about assets, we're always talking about investments, we always understand the balance between, okay, we invest here, how much we get, if we need to invest here after many failures in this direction. So we basically build the strategy around this return on investment many times. So I just want you to dive deeper in this aspect a little bit.
Okay. It's key. There's a metric that it's funny because I just wrote a blog post about this. There's a question I often ask a lot of my clients, and I'll ask them, what's the lifetime value of your customer, right? And I get a blank look. As I described in the blog, it's like a deer in the headlights. And then when I ask a follow-up question, okay, then how do you know how much to invest in trying to acquire a customer? The look is even better than Bambi's look. Um, and here's the thing, like, if you don't know the metrics, then it's very easy to make a lot of mistakes. And also you can either be leaving a lot of money on the table or blowing a lot of money off the table. So there's a really there's a marketing guy in the US. His name is Todd Brown, and I thought he gave one of the best uh, lessons on the importance of the lifetime value of a customer and the marketing investment that's required. Uh, I'm going to try to do justice because I love his example, but I'll bring it up here. So a lot of businesses, what they'll do is, let's say they sell a product, right? And let's say the product is $100, and they want to make a 20% margin on that. So when they go advertising, they'll say, I'm not going to spend more than $80 on a customer, right? But but once the customer buys that $100 product or service or whatever it is, in many businesses, they'll if you treat them right, they will buy something else from you, and again and again and again. Now, the customer lifetime value is just pretty much the average of what your customers spend with you, how frequently, and how long do they stick around. Right? So now, why is that important? So in that example, if I'm just the guy comes in and I say, okay, I'm just going to sell it for 80 because I want to make $20 on that first purchase. Right. But the reality is once that customer becomes a customer, I really don't need to spend a lot to market and advertise to him anymore. He's an existing customer. I can send him emails, I can send him, and let's just say for argument's sake that he buys three more things with us and he spends $500, right? Well, now really the lifetime value of acquiring a new customer is $600, right? The 100 in the front and the 500 in the back. And so what is that? So when you're just spending $80 on marketing, you might actually be limiting how many new customers you can get. And and so let's say that $80 I can get two new customers, right? But if I spend 100, I can get three. So in a sense, if I just spend enough to break even on that first product, I'm picking up three customers for free. I spend 100, they give me the 100 back. Now those three roll into the back end of my business, where I service them, and they each give me 500, 500 each, right? So 1,500. But if you don't know your customer lifetime value, you can make the mistake. You can either say, okay, I'm going to spend $150 to get this guy. And it's going to take 6 months to make that 500. And now I'm out of pocket by 50 over and over again. And I sink and burn. Or I go very conservative and I'm just leaving money on the table for my competition to come in and take those customers away. So that's an example of a metric that's really, really important. And let me talk about customer lifetime value more. Customer lifetime value, what does it mean? It means how, like as I said before, it means how much the customer is going to buy from you, how long they're going to stick around, how frequently they're going to buy for you. If you peel that back and think about it, if you provide a very good experience, what you should start seeing is you should see your customers spending more, staying longer, and buying more frequently. You should start seeing that number go up. If you see the number go flat or start going down, you know right away there's something wrong with your customer delivery. There's something wrong there. Why are they leaving? Why is the churn gone up? What's going on? And that's why the metric is so important. So let's talk about the return on investment. What was my return on investment of spending $100 and getting three customers? 15 to 1, right? But if I don't know that number, then it might be I might only take one customer because I'm too conservative, and so it's like 1.5 to 1, or I overspend and it's zero or negative. So the return on investment, if you don't measure, then you don't track, you can't measure. If you can't measure, you really can't, unless you're extremely lucky, you're going to be just wasting money or leaving money on the table. So we go back now to our earlier conversation, the return on investment. If I'm a new business and I say, okay, I have $100,000 in my bank account, that's all I have. Okay, I'm going to spend it on a TV advert. Well, is it the right audience? Do I know what they're going to do when they come in? It's probably a stupid use of my money. Whereas it might have been better to say, okay, I'm going to take 1,000 here, 1,000 here, 1,000 here. I'm going to test these different channels. I'm going to look at how many customers I'm acquiring from those channels. What are they spending? What are they doing? And then just based on the trial and error and the A/B testing and all that stuff, you start getting an idea, and then you start building the business on the back of that. So that's just one example of return on investment. And you can take it, another example I like to use is a lot of business owners will say, you know what, I don't want to hire an accountant because I'm going to have to pay that accountant, $300 a month, that service, right? And I can do it myself, and I just saved myself $300. Okay. Now let's think about that. So you maybe, unless your business is in accounting itself, I'm assuming this example it's not. Let's assume that you know QuickBooks very well and you're good at it. You're decent, okay? Did you really save $300 by doing it yourself? Or did the hour you spent on that take you away from an hour you could have spent on your core business, on maybe acquiring a new customer, a new customer who might have been worth $5,000 to you,
Mhm.
right? So while you're saving 300, you're giving away 5,000 over here. And in a lot of my engagements, it's a common issue. They really think that okay, we're going to save money. I'm bootstrapping. I'm doing this and this and that. No, it's as an owner, the return on investment on your time is a critical factor because
Mhm.
time is the one thing you can't get back. You can make back your money, you can lose people, bring them back, whatever it is, but time you can't get back. Once it's gone, it's gone. That's it. There's no back, no going back and getting it. So if you have a business with finite resources, including time, and you're spending it on things that do nothing for your business, uh, then that return on investment can actually be very expensive, even though you're not
Mhm.
literally taking money out of your wallet and putting it there, but you're losing everything on this side. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, time is money. It's absolutely 100% like that. So I think I'd like to also highlight a few things about just to illustrate your point as well,
Okay.
especially for coaches, especially for people who running courses. I saw it many times when they underestimate their ability to deliver. They create a lot of very powerful campaigns. They invest a lot of money in these campaigns and they kind of have good numbers, but then they under deliver. And that's exactly what you said, which was really important thing. You over deliver relatively to the promise in advertising, and that's how you build successful business. But what coaches often do, they invest a lot of money in ads, they get excessive amount of people to their programs, and then they dramatically under deliver and also do very poor customer service. And as a result, they're losing customers. They don't have customer retention. People don't get back to their products. And that's exactly what you're talking about. It's like, how much we invest in one customer. Do we have the strategy that our customer go on the journey with us and purchasing more and more and more, because it's obviously a better way to market. So you market them once and then you get them like in a whole story. So it's just like a little extra illustration from the different business to prove your point. So I want to ask you your three best tips for our audience about business.
Okay. One is, what's the ultimate reason why they started the business? So, for example, a lot of them will say, I'm going to start this business and then I am going to sell it one day, which is 70% of the business owners will say that. And then the next percentage will say that they want to pass it down to a child or something like that. Um, and so the first thing I do, and this is okay, this is where my business comes to play. But the first thing when I talk to them about it is I say, look, um, if that's your goal one day, you want to start basing your decisions on that from now, because uh, a profitable business is not a sellable business per se. You know, in order for a business to be sellable, it has to have a lot of other things going on besides just pure profitability. Uh, there's a statistic, that gets bantered around, but that 80% of businesses that look to sell will fail. They'll never find a buyer, which is kind of a crazy statistic if you think about it. You're much more likely to survive fighting in both world wars combined than being able to sell your business, which is kind of nutty. Um, and so and then when I talk to them about it, a lot of it is to put your step in the foot step in the shoes of someone else who's looking at your business from an outside perspective. So you know if the business is too dependent upon you, like if you are the business, then you own a job. You don't really own a business, because if you get hit by a bus, the business is gone in that instant, right? um, Whereas if you built a business which is quote unquote independent from you, you can actually take off for a month or two and it still be there. It's not going to just crash and burn. Um, so the first thing I do, I tell them is to think, if you want, a lot of people are happy to have a lifestyle business where, let's say you're a doctor and you're the only one in the office. That's fine. And you're going to make investments on the side, and the day you're ready to retire, you're happy to close the shop. You don't want to sell it. You don't care, right? That's different. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about where people want to build an asset. And so if they want to build an asset, then they have to start doing that from now. And so there's different things. I won't go into the details now, but there's different factors they have to do. But the point I was going to say is, if they think from the point of view of a buyer who's going to sink all their life savings in your business, what are the things that would scare them? One would be that if you get hit by a bus, the business disappears, so the business is too dependent upon you. Another thing might be that you have a book of customers, but one customer is worth 60% of the business, right? That customer can hold you hostage. Another thing might be that you have to run to the bank every month to make payroll because your customers take 90 days to pay you, and you're always, you're always trying to chase cash, right? That's another one. Um, and and another one is the customers themselves. Do they stick around? Do they promote you? Or are they always going in and out? Are they always leaving? Why? And and really ultimately what it's about is, you want to make your business, you want to have a business that shows a lot of promise, that there's paths to grow, that if someone can look at your business and say, wow, you know, you had $1 million at your disposal. I had 20. I can take that and skyrocket it. So you want to have that, but you also want it where it has a lot of predictability, that people feel confident that they can predict numbers on that business, and that they're going to hit them. And that's where it comes to risk. If your business is kind of all over the place, then people are not going to spend a lot because they don't know what the hell's going to happen with it. But if it's predictable, if your customers are all under contract and they come back over and over again, and you can almost show to a mathematical certainty over the next 12 months,
Mhm.
every single month, how much revenue you're going to be getting in, and when you spend your advertising, this is how many customers you get. When you can get to those type of metrics and you can show that type of data, then they're more likely to believe the projections you make and their own projections for how much you're going to grow, and then they're willing to pay that. Because here's one thing I always say: your business is only worth, unless you go public, your business is only worth what someone's willing to pay for it.
Mhm.
That's it. No one really cares how much hard work you put into it, how much you put into it 5 years ago. They don't care. No one does. They care about what your business can do for them the minute they take control. And so you always have to keep that in mind. It's not, you don't get a trophy for participating. No one cares. It's
Mhm.
it's can I will your business should I invest my money in you, or should I invest in someone else? That's really the question you have to answer. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is, we touched on it already, is not to underestimate the customer experience. Um, Customer service is not just an expense. It's not just like once the person becomes a customer, that they're not obligated by God to remain your customer. Um, and so you see this all the time, right? You have a business that's selling to you, and you get the salesperson is articulate, excellent. You want to hang out with this guy or this girl, right? They're perfect, And then as soon as you sign the contract and that's done, you get sent over to customer service, which often is outsourced somewhere where English is not the native language, uh, and where the service standards are subpar to poor. And you see this especially with your banking, credit cards. How many times do you have to go through the whole phone system and all this? They would never imagine doing that to you when you were still a prospect, right?
Mhm.
If they wouldn't imagine doing that, but they'll do that to you as a customer, and because they see customer service as an expense. Now, here's the problem. The problem, and we talked about this customer lifetime value. The problem is, you make a lot more money from your existing customers than you do from new ones. It's just, as long as you treat them right. And so I think a great opportunity for so many small businesses is that if they can nail the customer service, Uh, the product can have flaws in it. And it'll be fine because of the customer experience. So, perfect example, let's say web development companies. I think this is a great example. So, web development companies, at the end of the day, you know, uh, you can find a lot of web development companies that can build you a WordPress or build whatever, and have some and do a good job at it, right? But what's going to be the difference? I think the difference is going to be the experience that the company provides. So I'm a business owner. I'm making an investment for someone to develop my website. I don't want to be left in the dark. I don't want to be told, okay, here's the form, here's the approach, sign this off, and okay, go ahead now, piss off and leave us alone. I want to have, a partner in a way to say, okay, listen, your website, we're going to do this. We're going to do it this way. We think you should bring this in. Or, you know what, maybe a website doesn't make sense for you having it this way. Maybe we make it a smaller website and we're going to concentrate on landing pages, or we're going to concentrate on something else, or we're going to do an app, but whatever it is. Um, it's the often what happens is that you become a customer, you're going through this experience, and you're the one who's pushing, like, hey, we need, can we have a meeting? Can we have an update? Can we have what's going on? What's going, da da da. Or they come to you and say, we need your content, we need your content, we need your content. Okay, yeah, okay, fine, okay. But you know, um, so the customer experience, and this the companies that can pull this off, where the customer is wowed at every step of that journey, you know, from the discovery phase to the development phase to the implementation phase and to the follow-up after that. Uh, that can make a huge difference, because they will be willing to tolerate certain things maybe not being the best. Maybe your developers aren't as, top notch as the guy down the street, but the guy down the street treats his customers like crap. So no one wants to deal with him. So the second thing is the customer experience. I think that's the one area that we really have an opportunity to outcompete, especially the bigger players, because they treat that as an expense, and they're happy to cut costs on that and put subpar people on that. So that you can just kick them to the curb on that.
Mhm.
And so I talked about return on investment, sellability. We talked about the customer experience, um, and 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 really we kind of touched on it a lot. But uh, the third thing, when I talk to them, to a lot of my clients, is not to underestimate the importance of the human element, the culture, the other things in their business. Um, you know, for example, when we of course we give a lot of advice on how to delegate, right? But I tell them, don't just take your people and throw them in the swimming pool and say, go ahead and swim, right? And don't assume just because something was natural to you that's going to be natural to them, especially when it comes to, let's say, the entrepreneurial drive or something like that, because at the end of the day, um, employee, employer, you are going to have different objectives for the business. As an employer, you want profitability, you want the business to be profitable. The employee, that day they might be thinking of, the happy hour coming up. They might be thinking of the family holiday coming up. Whether 15 minutes before closing time on a Friday, I don't think they're really going to be concentrating on the net margin or of the next product that's going to go through the door. There's traffic forming. They might be happy just to kind of shut those doors and get the hell out before they get stuck in an hour of traffic. So you have to understand that, it is what it is. But if you make an effort, and you really build a culture, you know, and you have to walk the walk of this, right? An owner can't say, hey, we're really into open communication, and have his door shut all the time. Or, hey, we want you to be entrepreneurial. And then when they make a mistake, you rip their heads off. You have to walk the walk. But here's the thing, when you have the culture in place, you can scale your business to an amazing height, because your employees, they're part of it. They bought into
Mhm.
the philosophy and the vision that you wanted to set. They bought into the whole you don't even need to, you don't have to play police officer. You don't have
Mhm.
to be the teacher making sure that everyone showed up and you're taking attendance. You know, they'll do it. And so I think with a lot of businesses, I say, we also have an opportunity to really set the tone and the culture of what we want to do. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's very it's very easy to slip into bad habits. It's very easy to let a crisis or what you think is a crisis overwhelm, and but but ultimately, if you have the discipline and you built the systems and you said this is the culture of what we're going to do and live up to it, you know,
Mhm.
then that's really, really important. And living up to it might be, I've had examples where there's a toxic client, and my advice to the business is fire that client,
Mhm.
and in one instance, the client was worth 40% of the revenue. And I said, okay, no, fair enough. But how much time did they take from you guys? And they're like, well, we already lost 3 account managers and they pretty much take up 90% of our time.
Right.
Um, and I said, okay, so if you free your time, how many more clients can you get in to replace that 40%? And they did it. They fired them. They had a momentary dip, but everyone was so happy when that client went out the window, and they went and they picked up clients that were more profitable. So
Mhm.
at the end of the day, within 3 months, they were much better off than if they stuck with the toxic guy. And the same with toxic employees. Um,
Mhm.
Same with a toxic supplier. If you have a supplier who keeps messing you about, and you have the flexibility to get rid of them, get rid of them. Because they're just messing you about. They're not worth doing business with. So I
Exactly.
guess there's a lot more I could talk about, but those are three things that come to mind.
It's a lot of wisdom, to be honest. Like, to me, it resonates with whatever I teach and tell and things like this. And it's like balm on my soul. I feel like supported with your conversation. It's amazing. Side effect. So where people can find you, because I think 100% you are worth to hire, so whatever you said, it's absolutely makes sense to me. And I think to many people who are in business for long enough, they will resonate with that. So how people can get in touch with you and connect and actually hire you?
Okay. There's two things. There's on my website, the Sophiall website. I have there's a consult. They can click on that and go through there. Also on my LinkedIn, and then I'm on the number I have on the website. That's another way they can reach me through WhatsApp, or they can email me. So the WhatsApp, they can reach me on. I'm based in Dubai, so this is a UAE number,
Mhm.
971-50-705-6430. Uh, on my on my email for your listeners, they can just email me personally at
Mhm.
George at Sophiall.com, and that's Sophiall.com. And then the website, if they go to Sophiall.com on the website, they can find out more. They can do the consult button, and then they'll see they can and also contact. They can reach me through there also. Um, and then if they, one thing I like to do is, I like to just give advice. I send out daily emails, for example, to subscribers. So
Mhm.
it's free to subscribe to stuff like that, where they can get daily tips on scaling and growing and making a business more sellable. Um, and yeah, that's several of the ways. And
I
then
love
and
it.
then my
I mean,
LinkedIn
it
profile. I'm
it
on LinkedIn too.
absolutely worth to subscribe for your emails because whatever you told here, it's like so much gold, and I love it. Thank you so much for this interview, George.
Thank you. Thank you. I really enjoyed it.